It's recording now. Um, so I think we're just going to start off by going around and introducing each of ourselves. So my name's Abby Passford. I'm a third-year nutrition science student. And growing up, I played volleyball. And so with that in relation to Title IX, I kind of, for the most part, always had male coaches. I had a couple, but seeing as though I, in my opinion, think volleyball is more of a female-dominated sport. Looking back, that's interesting to me that there were more male coaches than female, and I never really felt uncomfortable about it. I felt like the coaches were really good at their job and like inclusive, but I do think it's interesting looking back that I had more male coaches in general.
My name's Amy. I'm a third-year psychology major. Growing up, I played basketball, volleyball, soccer, softball. I was definitely one of those kids that like got thrown into every sport just for fun. But then in high school, my freshman year, I played volleyball, basketball, and I ran track. And then kind of like between freshman and sophomore year, I decided that volleyball was going to take me the farthest. So I quit everything for volleyball, and now I play college volleyball. And just like looking back on my volleyball experience, I think every single one of my head coaches has been a male, except for in college. My head coach right now is a female, and she's like totally like broken everything about like all like the male like dominance. Like, I don't know, it's just really awesome to see her be a female head coach, and she's like been so successful as a female head coach, and she's had so much support from her staff because her two assistant coaches are males, and so that's really awesome to see all the support. And even from the community, like everyone loves seeing a female head coach a really successful sport. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Megan McKee. I'm a third-year business administration student here at Cal Poly. I never really had like a strict sport growing up that I played, except I did skiing, which doesn't really count for like coaching because my dad taught us. But one of the sports that lasted the longest was dance. And that was a very female-dominated sport. I don't think there was many guys in the studio. I always had female teachers. So growing up with that sport, it was definitely nothing was weird except for the fact that it was seen as different when there was like a male coach or a male dance teacher. As far as other sports go, like when I played soccer, I did definitely have male coaches, but it wasn't anything that I really like kept an eye on because they were good qualified coaches. It was more so I compared it to my brothers playing sports and they never had women coaches. So yeah, that was definitely something that I did compare and reflect on, but it wasn't anything that I thought was like unfair due to the fact that there was qualified people teaching me how to play a sport. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Maylee Shiketti. I'm a second-year Kines major. I grew up playing gymnastics, and all my head coaches were males. But they also had it where they split it so that like if one was more qualified on a certain event, like beam, for example, then like a female coach would coach us on beam. But overall, I think I was definitely more coached by male coaches, even though I feel like for artistic gymnastics, it's very different than male gymnastics. So I think that's very interesting that we had male coaches who would coach us in gymnastics, but they would leave the choreography and dance and more of like what we would attribute to female things that we had our female coaches teach us. And now as a gymnastics coach myself, I coach with mainly, I have another coach that helps me, and she's a female coach. But if we ever have we need help on bars or anything like that, we have one of the male coaches like who's qualified, and he's very well known to be good on that event, help us. But other than that, I think it's very interesting to see how in a female dominated sport, I had mainly male coaches helping me as I grew up.
Yeah, I also think I wanted to go around and have all of us just like say where we're from because I feel like that could be interesting to like see if there's a spread. So I'm from San Diego, California, and like I said, I played volleyball indoor and outdoor, so beach as well, and had pretty much all male coaches. So yeah.
I'm from a small town outside Sacramento. It's called Auburn. It's like super small. But I think having like the small town culture, it was like more common to see male coaches, especially like in soccer. Like it was like the typical, like the dad was the soccer coach and like the mom was like brought the snacks, whatever. But yeah, I played volleyball growing up and like all my coaches were males until, like I said, college. I feel like just like being in different locations was like definitely like there was a big difference. So yeah.
I'm from a suburb outside of Seattle. It's called Woodinville, Washington. Definitely another smaller town like Amy. So the coaches for recreational sports were mostly like people's fathers. Like when I was in soccer, one of my friends on the team, her dad was the coach. That was just super common. Um, and yeah, I basically followed the same sort of culture as Amy had.
I'm from Slow, so it's also another small town. And they brought in coaches from other places, not many local coaches, but they're mostly brought in from other places, which was interesting. And then all the coaches they brought in were usually male coaches.
One thing I will add is thinking about it in high school, my volleyball coach was a female, but I think it was more of like the situation where like they didn't really have anybody to coach. So one of my teammates' moms just kind of stepped up. But she was pretty successful at it and she like helped me a lot with where I am now in my volleyball career. So thankful for that.
Also, going off of what you said before, Amy, I thought it was really interesting that you were pointing out like the dads were typically the coaches and like the moms would bring the snacks, like do the girls' hair before games, like coordinate matching socks or uniforms and stuff like that. And like personally, I never saw any dads doing that. And again, like growing up, that's just what I thought was normal, never questioned it. And I was like, makes sense. Like the dad's going to be the coach. He's going to be like the one yelling at the ref if something went wrong. And the moms are going to be like, oh, like, it's okay. You know, so it's kind of like those classic, like nuclear family roles that I grew up and had reinforced through sports. So I thought that was interesting when you pointed that out. But yeah.
Do we want to? I can read off question one and we can just start by that. So, question one is, what did you learn about Title IX that you did not previously know? And where did your prior information about Title IX come from? I can start off. I actually didn't know that Title IX didn't address specific genders. Like it doesn't say anything about women. It's about all genders. It just happens to be that women are the ones that were facing some sort of discrimination or just didn't have it as good as men. Um, so that's one thing I found really interesting, just learning the wording of it, because growing up, I always thought it was, oh, Title IX woman. Like it's Title IX everyone. And why my previous information I got from Title IX, I'm pretty sure was just in like health classes related to sports, because that is something that is correlated to women in sports. So yeah, I don't think that it was ever like really addressed super deeply like it is in this class, which I think it's nice to learn more about it. It's just kind of skimmed over and more so like, oh, girls get to play sports too, which was kind of weird. But yeah, just learning about the wording and realizing, oh, it's not pointed at women was pretty interesting to me. Just anyone, if men were getting as good as quality standards as women, then the pendulum would swing the other way. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think I didn't really know anything about Title IX, honestly, until I came to college. Because then like playing my sport in college, we like had to like, we did like a little mini lesson on Title IX and just like what it was about and like why it's important to a female sport. But like you said, like I didn't know that it wasn't like specifically addressed to females. It was kind of addressed to every gender. So that's also something new I learned. But yeah, before like this class, I didn't know a lot about it. And just like I said, I did like a little bit of learning through my sport. But it's like, it's cool to learn about it now and like learn more about it and like what it actually is, because it like kind of super relates to like me and my sport and like everyone and like females and like pretty much every athlete actually. So yeah.
Similar to both of you, I didn't know a ton about it before, and specifically, like Megan said, I didn't realize that it addressed all genders or just it was like a blanket statement, and I thought that it was more directed just at the female gender. So I thought that was interesting when that was pointed out. And I just hadn't really like talked about it a ton in any of my classes before, so I kind of like understood the general concept, but I didn't really like know the details of like what went into it and what it really meant, and like how that, after it went into effect, played out and played a huge role in like where we are today, even as individuals. And like coming to college and learning about it in this class, I definitely like reflected on myself and like the opportunities that I've had as a result of like that going into place.
Yeah, I didn't know much about Title IX. I think I've heard the term like thrown out, but like I hadn't really educated myself. And I think one of the things that I was found really interesting was how it allows like making sure that everyone has equal participation and equal playing time and scheduling time for like gyms and stuff. And one example that I like thought about when I realized how that benefits like everyone was like, and She's the Man, when they lose the field or something, the soccer field, to the boys because the boys team had priority and things like that. And how now, like with Title IX, like it's very important that everyone has equal schedule time for games and practice.
We can just go right into the second question too, because I do have quite a bit of questions about Title IX. It's still, what questions do you still have about Title IX? And I think one of the main questions that I have is they have this test, the three-pronged test, and schools basically have to meet one of the three criteria in order to fit and be like in in accordance with Title IX. But I'm just so curious to learn like the behind the scenes and who's actually advising this criteria and checking off and making sure that schools are actually reaching this in regards to women's sports, and like the disbursement of gender that's checking these requirements too. I would just be curious because I feel like there's a lot of loopholes that usually happens with a lot of situations where people from the outside are like, oh yeah, like look at us, we're doing so great, but really behind the scenes it's not as rainbows and sunshine as it's appearing to be. One of them in specifics was, one of the prongs was basically if schools are trying to make sports available to all genders, and like say females are just not having a desire to do them, then they're in accordance with Title IX. But what schools have been doing is just sending out surveys, and nobody wants to fill out surveys. I don't know if you guys get random surveys in your email, and I just do not even pay attention to them. And basically from these surveys, you would only get few response, and they would be like, are you interested in opening new sports programs and stuff, which clearly some people may be interested in that, but like they're not going to get excited about a survey to fill it out or know that that's what the survey is for. So these schools basically just get away with not having opportunities for everyone and equal participation because of a survey, which statistically, like I said, the responses on surveys are pretty bad. So I would just love to see the operations that go behind making these schools held accountable.
I agree. I think that's something I'd be super curious to know about, is how it's like being upheld in areas that aren't as progressive as like California or Seattle or somewhere where it's like definitely an emphasis has been pushed on it. I feel like typically just in the South, that's kind of something that's been known to be a less progressive area where they kind of uphold like the traditional values that America used to hold of like girls do this, boys do that. And so I think it could be interesting to see like not only how they're enforcing it, but also like what they're teaching in schools. Because I feel like we've definitely shifted as a state and just like overall teaching girls that like they deserve a spot in sports just like boys do, and like try and enforce that through our sports and what we're learning in school and college also. So I feel like that would be really interesting to know like what's actually going on in other parts of the world, not only in the United States, but just in general too.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing that also just came to mind is like, I wonder like how it works with like male sports and like if they get like the same education as like female sports do. Because just thinking about it, I'm just like thinking about male sports at Cal Poly. I'm just like, I think most of them have male coaches as well. And like, I just wonder if they like make it as big as a deal as like my coach, for example. Like she makes it a huge deal to like follow rules and like have equality and everything like that. So I just like wonder like what happens in like the male sports, you know? Just makes me think.
Yeah, mine's similar to Megan's with just how they keep like how they're able to see if they're upholding the three-prong test. And I'm sure that people do come around and check, but then I'm also sure that some like there, like you said, that there are loopholes to get around it. And also what Abby said about like how other countries, how they go about making sure that everyone has equal opportunities for sports and scholarships and everything. And if the US is doing everything they can to make sure it's as equal as possible.
Another question too that I have is just about transgender people and intersex people, how they fit in with this, because there hasn't been much said about that in regards to sports, and it's definitely something like that's debated about what where they should be able to play and everything like that. So I'm just curious to see like how that will shape Title IX, or maybe like have an addition to Title IX to give all kinds of people equal opportunity and participation within the sports world. So yeah. Do you guys just want to go on the third question? Okay, so the third question is reflect on and discuss whether or not Title IX has impacted your life. And Amy, I think you had a big one about this, so you can go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, just because I like play a college sport, like it's not like I feel like it's not like a bigger deal in my life because I play a college sport, because like Title IX is like a big deal, like no matter what like level you play at. But just like being in college, I've like learned a lot about it. Like I said, from like my coach and just from my program, like we've learned a lot about it. I also remember, I think it was maybe my sophomore year, I wrote a paper on Title IX and I interviewed my coach, and she just like completely like opened my eyes to like the reality of Title IX. And like, because I remember I interviewed her and I had a question. I was like, since volleyball is like, it doesn't have, it's called like a sister sport or like a brother sport, like there's no men's volleyball at Cal Poly. I was like, how does our budget work? Because for example, like the basketball teams, like say like if the men's team does good, then like the women's team's supposed to get like the same budget, supposed to get like the same. So I asked my coach, I was like, what, like, how does that work for us since we don't have like a male sport? And so I asked about football. I was like, football doesn't have a female sport. So like, are we like connected with them? Because like I know a lot of people on my team at least, or a lot of people have asked me like if we get like almost the same kind of budget as them because they don't have a female sport and we don't have a male sport. And my coach was like, no, like that's not how it works at all. And she just like completely like showed me what reality was. And we're like, we kind of don't have anything to do with football. Like they do what they do and they get a way bigger budget than us. And like in reality, like the majority of female sports at Cal Poly are kind of like they get screwed over with budgets and stuff, which was just like really sad to hear. But my coach, she like is in it, she deals with it, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's just like really interesting to learn everything that she taught me about. And like I said, super opened my eyes to the reality of it and like totally like corrected my assumptions, which was good, but it's also kind of unfortunate at the same time.
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear that Cal Poly sports are kind of like, because I would think just how I was saying before is like being in California, you think that like as a very progressive state, we would be like one of the first like areas to make that an emphasis to make things equal. And so that I would be so interested to hear more about that, just because I mean, also I feel like schools are really good at like making it seem like everything's perfect on the outside, and like the reality is not the same as like what's advertised. And so that's really interesting. But I think like personally, Title IX has definitely affected me, maybe not like on a as great of a scale as you, just because you're still involved with that sports team currently, and obviously like the stakes are higher when you're playing in college and stuff. But I think just like even having the opportunity to like travel places with my volleyball team, and like being able to get rowdy during games and not feel like I'm like being compared to a boy if I like get passionate about a certain play or a certain call. Like I think that being able to do that probably wouldn't have been the same like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so I think simply just that in itself is a great example of like how we've shifted our view. But I think an interesting point to that is that like boys, on the other hand, have maybe gotten like a shorthand, like the short stick, where like we're more accepted in the being compared to boys, like being passionate about something or like playing a boy sport. Like girls can be on football teams. So like let's say a boy wants to be a cheerleader, like that has definitely, I feel like they've endured more scrutiny in that sense. And like that's what's bringing about change recently. So I think that's something interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think part of it plays in tune with orthodox gender roles, orthodox gender ideology, basically just the classic roles for gender. So women are more accepted as maybe sharing more masculine traits, but when men try to go the other way, it's like taking away from their masculinity, and that's something that's like super important for them to uphold. So like a guy on a dance team or a guy on a cheerleading team, like they could just be super passionate about it, but it's almost like they get a side eye by other people, which I don't think is fair at all. But like, let's say a female is on the wrestling team, they get like support for that because they're going out and being a woman and playing in a male dominated sport and representing themselves as a woman. Personally, to me, in regards to sports, Title IX has had an impact, specifically like comparing my opportunities from like my mom and then my opportunities from my grandma. Like each generation has been completely different, and there's been huge advances, I mean, from each generation, just with openness and willingness of women to be able to immerse themselves within the sports world. So that's definitely something that's like cool to see the progress. Because like I said, my mom and my grandma have different stories. And just wondering like if I have a daughter in the future, like what is going to be like for her. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you brought up, that how our grandparents and moms, like it was so much like it was so different for them. And I think I don't even fully realize the impact that Title IX has had on me because I was like born after. But I do think one thing that I'm super grateful for is just the opportunities that it's brought. Like we can consider doing sports as a career, and it's not just something that like, oh, girls can do it because they need to do PE or whatnot. But now it's actually something that females can pursue as something they want to do in the future. And it's also helped bring so many more girls into the sports industry. And yeah, it's been huge.
So the fourth question was, after watching the short video clip, discuss your reaction to the content and what course concepts helped explain the lack of women in coaches. My reaction was unfortunately kind of unfazed, because these are kind of the things I'm aware of. And I think that's kind of sad as a woman to just kind of watch it and be like, well, yeah. But it was also inspiring to see women who are so passionate about coaching, and really wanting to spread the word and gain awareness on the lack of women coaches within professional sports teams. Because in reality, like if someone's qualified, it shouldn't be a matter of their gender. It should just be like they are the people there that are going to help make a team stronger and help lead a team to success. And again, that leads to orthodox gender ideology again, bolstering masculinity. I feel like some teams don't hire females because they feel like maybe only men can coach masculinity, if that makes sense. But in reality, that shouldn't be like the the baseline for choosing a coach, again, it should be based on qualification. And one thing that's always shared outside of the sports world, just like within the workforce nowadays, is the inclusion of diversity, because with diversity, it cultivates a whole pile of ideas that you wouldn't get if it was just like everyone was just kind of cookie cutter. But that same idea really isn't being reflected within sports teams and coaches, because again, like even within women's sports, there's still a huge majority of men coaching. And even in like what Melee was saying, did I pronounce that right? Or is it Malie? Okay. Um, uh, anyways, when she was saying men teaching women's gymnastics, like they necessarily aren't completely aware of that. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I agree that I was kind of just like a little bit unfazed, unfortunately, because I was like, I mean, I feel like I've heard this story a million times. Like, we're just underrepresented in general. But again, like you said too, it was really inspiring and like empowering for me to see people like fighting so hard to make changes. And it's really going to be like a domino effect, I think, in the future, where like it's going to have to start at the top. It's going to take a lot of hard work and like attention towards the subject for changes like that to be made down to our level. But I think eventually it will happen. And so I think like it's a good start and we're like moving in the right direction finally, making like such hard work go into like actually like actions. And so I think that's going to be really exciting for us eventually, and like hopefully our children in the future will like not even have to be faced by this. Like they'll be like, oh yeah, all my or like half my coaches were female, half them were male, like whatever it may be. But on the topic of like different theories, I feel like any of the feminist theories could apply to this, and just like kind of fighting those patriarchal like systems that have been put in place and kind of forced on us. And I think like I said before, these changes are going to be put in place and kind of shift the narrative a little bit.
I was also pretty unfazed from the video when I watched it because I think we're so just numb to the fact that there's a lot more male coaches out there than females. And even watching the Olympics now and last summer, I was specifically watching like the gymnastics and how like the whole there was a whole scandal in gymnastics recently with the doctor, and seeing still how so many of the coaches that were coaching like the Olympians were male for the female gymnasts, and that kind of surprised me a lot. And then also how right now, for like a course concept that I think explains why there's such a lack of female coaches, is it's just a male dominated world. And I think now taking this course and really thinking about it, I've become so much more aware, but I don't think a lot of males realize this, or it's more subconscious. Like they're so used to being in a world where a lot of what they're taught and everything is through other male coaches. So they're not really realizing how much of the sports world is dominated by other males.
Yeah, I totally agree. And going off what I think Abby said, you mentioned the domino effect, and just like thinking of an example, I know in like the NFL, like I know for the 49ers, I think maybe like their defensive coach or something like that was a female. And I just remember seeing so many commercials on TV about her. And I feel like just like putting that out into the world for like young girls to see, and like more like female athletes to see, be like, oh, cool, like she's literally coaching the NFL. Like I can do that too. I can do whatever. So I feel like just more like publicity of that kind of stuff would be so awesome to see more in the future. And then it would like get the ball rolling for more girls to be like, I can go play pro, or I can go coach pro, whatever. So yeah, I think that'd be cool.
Well, I think that was everything. So I'm going to stop the recording now, but thank you guys. That was a really great discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much.